from the Committee of Budget, you know also how we can pay us out of this crisis. This is possible because we cannot print only money, I think, in the end. We need also concepts who are also working after the crisis, otherwise we're coming from the crisis to the next crisis. And we have as input statements Helmut Hirner, President of the Austrian Association for Touristic. I think you are representing the touristic agents. I think this is also, these are these really small businesses and medium businesses, I think very hard hitting from Austria. Then Montserrat Barriga, Director General, European Region Airlines Associations. Also, I think we will hear now how is the impact for your airlines. I think it's a little bit different situation than to Ryanair or Lufthansa. And then Claudia Schmidt, former member of the European Parliament, now SME Connect Advisor for Tourism, Transport and Infrastructure. She has, Claudia, you have experienced many years also as member of the City Council of Salzburg. I think also the city who is very connected with tourism. And I think you know what measures are needed now and how shops owners are hidden by this situation. And I think we're coming directly to the welcome, but after this we have also, I think, I hope, also time for question and answer sessions. So, Claudia, Monteiro, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you so much, Horst. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, first of all, for your availability to be here in this morning. Hope your families are safe and healthy. And yes, number one is saying that Portugal is having good results. Hope we can continue or maintain. We are doing, as all Europe, I think, a huge effort on staying home. But unfortunately, travel and tourism are huge sectors, and with a huge impact on GDPs, especially here in Portugal. And also just to remind you that I'm from Madeira Island, an island that depends almost exclusively from tourism, and being an island brings more constraints to the development of the economy. Just for the debate, just share some thoughts and some numbers so that we can discuss after. But since 2009, tourism and travel have felt some uncertainties, requesting the Brexit. Then we had the collapse of Thomas Cook and other airline companies that we will listen here with our colleague of the panel, and now we have this COVID pandemic. Well, this leaves, of course, irreversible effects on all the value chain. We are speaking here about lots of SMEs, tour operators, airline companies, hotels, and all the domino effect that this will bring to the chain. And as we all know, we are speaking about around 13 million people. So it's a lot of the number is big on the impact that the travel and tourism sector will be affected. We are feeling in lots of destinations. We know that, just to give you the example, here in Portugal, 98% of the restaurants are closed, and hotels. So it's very, very, very difficult to see how can we, will we give a quick answer to the sector, but also another segment that is the MICE sector. Well, trade fairs, congresses, cultural events have been cancelled or postponed. we have the 2020 Euro Football Championship, also the Olympic Games. So all of these events or meetings or segments of the tourism are being very affected. Just another example, it's regarding the cruise companies. Cruise ships have been stranded at sea, and more ports are having temporarily have been refused their entry. So as we have numbers, just to share with you from the UNWTO, the number of tourist arrivals could decline 20 to 30% this year compared with 2019. Sorry, and this could translate into a loss of 270 or 400 billion losses. Comparing with SARS in the outbreak of 2003, this pandemic will bring to the tourism sector a recovery of at least 10 months. Well, speaking on 10 months, it's for sure 1 year that has been lost for the tourism sector. Well, we need to think in the future, and we need to start all politicians and political agents. We need to think in the future. How will we help lots of SMEs, because we are talking about SMEs that need help on liquidity, that are putting many of the workers, most of the workers on layoff, but most of them are already thinking on massive unemployment. So we need to do quick answers. I know that the European Commission has launched several have put in place different instruments, like the flexibility of state aids, like the programs for support SMEs, like the SURE program. But we need to think a little bit more and to put the tourism where we are going to be in 5 years. What will be the tourism in 5 years? Passengers will change their way of traveling. Security will be an essential or a factor that will be in the heads and the decision of people that are wanting to travel. So airports will need also to change the way of working. Tourism destinations will need to change and rethink how they will promote the destination. And I think here that each member state will do a little bit that what we are already doing, that is to ask for the citizens to make tourism inside, come and make more tourism inside. But for this, we need to work all together to prepare the segments of tourism. Just to finish, and then we can discuss better. Just to share with you what we are doing in the European Parliament, because we have a tourism task force with all the representatives of all the groups, political groups, and for that we have proposed already the creation of a tourism crisis management mechanism for effective cooperation at the EU level. And also we want to establish an EU rescue plan for travel and tourism sector. Well, after assessing the damages and the needs of the sector, we need an European guide for recovery with a message that guarantees health and safety. And of course, we need to be in close cooperation with the tourism value chain. We have launched several questions to the different commissioners, but we are aware that we need to hear the sector, to hear the tour operators, the agencies, the airline companies, the cruises. All segments need to be heard, because we need to feel as political deciders to implement good measures. We need to feel the sector. So we have a long period a long period to recover, but a short period to implement now the measures, especially because we are talking about the liquidity of the SMEs, and the impact that the losses of all these SMEs in the tourism sector will bring all over Europe social problems. And those social problems we need to try to avoid helping enterprises. If our enterprises are okay, we are talking about jobs, we are talking about people that have money to eat and to support their families.
Thank you very much. I think you summarized it very well, how dramatic the situation is. And if I make my research before, the news are not very promising. If experts say that the tourism sector will be recovered 2023 earliest, that means 3 years. How to survive, even if the state would help with in the financial part. I think we have really to find also different solutions out of the situation. Also, if you see that perhaps it's not the last wave of this pandemic, if they say it could be up to 5 years, it will have an impact to the tourism sector in the long term. And yes, the situation is dramatic. Georgios, I think you coming from a country who has in the past a different situation and was recovered now and in a good, becoming in a better shape now, and now exactly now this pandemic is coming up. How you see how we can help, how long we can help the SMEs in this sector?
Okay, thank you. Hello to everybody. I hope you're fine, you and your members of your family. As you correctly pointed out, I come from Greece, which has a history of economic crisis and also has the biggest dependency on the tourist sector because our industry is not as developed as it should be. The first point I would like to make is that this crisis is different from the previous one. COVID-19 hurts at the same time demand and supply. Take, for example, the tourist sector. Tourists not want to visit us, so demand is going down because they have problems. At the same time, supply cannot function in the sense that hotels could be a threat to public health. So there is a lockdown applied to the hotels. So you don't just have to spend more money. It's not, let's say, the economy going on a downward slope. So you have to increase demand and solve your problem by spending. The situation is much more complicated. Then, of course, there is a different dependence on tourism according to the country that you come from. That's why OECD estimates that Greece will have the worst performance during the present crisis, and Ireland will have one of the best performances because Ireland has a very strong pharmaceutical sector and is very strong as far as digital economy, and American corporations that are based in Ireland are concerned. So the estimate of the OECD is that Ireland will do much better than the average, and Greece will do much worse than the average due to its strong dependency on the tourism sector. And of course, you have the predictions of the IMF. The IMF predicts -3% for the global GDP, minus 7.5% for the Eurozone GDP, -8 and 9% for Spain and Italy, respectively, because they also have a strong dependency on tourism, and minus 10% for Greece, because we have the strongest dependency on tourism. And we started the year by believing that we would develop by 2.5 to 2.8%. 2 months ago, we had the prediction 0%. Now the government prediction, then the government prediction was -2%. And now the government's prediction, Greek government's prediction, is -5 to -10%. And that means that our unemployment rate will go from 17 point something to 22 point something%. So things are very difficult. Another point is that the response has to be synchronized. This makes it more delicate, the issue, because in tourism it takes two to tango. Greece should be ready to welcome foreign visitors, and of course foreign tourists should be in a position to travel to Greece, have the ability, and should also be in the mood to travel. So if we study the revenues that we had from tourism in 2019, our biggest source of income is Germany, 18.9%. And we know that according to market research, what the Germans will spend in tourism could go down even by 70% in 2020. The second biggest country of tourist revenue, as Greece is concerned, is the UK, 12.4%. And then we have the United States of America, France, Italy, and the Netherlands. And of course, Germany is doing rather well in coping with COVID-19, but Italy is not doing so well, and the Netherlands also have some problems, and the USA is, for the time being at least, in a state of total confusion. So it's a delicate task because we have to prepare ourselves as a tourist nation, but the others has to be in a position to visit us and give us an economic chance. The fourth point I would like to make is that tourism, of course, is dependent on air transport. Out of 32 million tourists that visited Greece last year, 22 million flew to Greece, 2 out of 3. And this is, a strategic dependency. And of course, last year, the most successful company in Greece was Aegean Airlines, developing profitable, ready to buy the Croatia Airlines, Air Croatia. And they made a big investment, 5 to 6 billion euros, leasing Airbus aircrafts. And now, of course, the Aegean Airlines is the company, the Greek company with the biggest financial problem. So we have to do something about air transport. And also this has to do with airports, because we are in the process of privatizing. We have successfully privatized airports in Greece, but we want to continue the process. And of course, now this process is upside down, faces a lot of problems. The fifth point is that we have to sustain the industry during this period of crisis, the sector, because according to the estimates in Greece, hotel businesses will lose in 2019 55% of their revenues. They will restrict the number of employees by 40%. And 60% of these companies in the hotel sector believe that they are, there's a big probability that they will go bankrupt. So we have to sustain SMEs and companies in general, so to weather the storm. Otherwise, when the situation will ameliorate, there won't be any tourist sector able to perform in competitive terms. And of course, the performance of the tourist sector creates additional problems to the Greek banking sector, which has a lot of problems due to the crisis in 2008, 2009, and the new crisis in 2015, the radical left-wing experiment. So we have to sustain the sector and at the right point find fresh capital, working capital, so that will give them the chance to restart their operation. Of course, the sixth point is that time is money. We want a return to normality as fast as possible. We have to have a roadmap for returning to normality. The European Commission is already working in this respect. A containment of the spread of the COVID-19 you need. You also need a health system that can cope with possible new increase of cases. And what is very important, I think it's the German approach, which is correct. It's an ability to conduct massive testing. In Greece, we are doing very well, quote unquote. We have only 101 deaths, but we are not very competent in massive testing. And I don't think you can return to normality without solving this problem. We have to work on it. Of course, if you study the time curve of the revenues of the tourist sector, the most important quarter in Greece is the third quarter. That is the months July to September. It's 59% of annual revenues. So it is imperative for us to salvage parts of this quarter, this tourist quarter, to do something. We don't know exactly because the situation is very, very complicated. But last year we had 18.2 billion euros revenues in the tourist sector from foreign tourists. We hope that we'll be able, the government at least hopes that we'll be able to salvage somewhat the third quarter, reach, let's say, 60% of the revenues of last year. So instead of having 18 billion euros revenues, we'll be satisfied if we achieve 5.6 billion euros, a huge drop, but even this operation, salvaging somewhat the third quarter, cannot be guaranteed because, in my view, it's very complicated. Of course, there is a trade-off, how fast you push the restart button and what risks you take. The worst thing that can happen to you is restart the tourist sector and then find out that you cannot operate in the sense that it's not safe. Then you will have huge problem because you will not only have lost the year 2020, you will also be discredited for the future, the year 2021. So it's a crucial question. What can we do? In my view, first we have to define European rules for the game, as far as commercial airlines are concerned, which are of strategic importance to us. And I also believe that we need some form of European rescue package for European airlines. The Americans have already decided on their package because if, let's say, we have a lot of bankruptcies in this sector, then developing in the future the tourist sector will become much more difficult. The second point is that we could use the so-called vouchers. So instead of returning cash to customers, to tourists that will postpone their vacation, you return vouchers that entitle them to use them in the future. But of course, this is a delicate matter because we should respect the rights of customers. But it's a big boost for the Greek tourist industry and the tourist industry in general because they don't have enough cash for the time being. The third point is that we could use the model of certified tourists or some kind of a variation of this model. But of course, this model relies on massive testing, the so-called German approach. I think we should move in this direction. Then we should have a very complicated cost reduction exercise, reducing VAT where this is possible, other taxation, social security costs, reducing airport taxes and fees, because when the recovery will start, the situation is going to be very competitive, not among us Europeans, but between the European tourist sector and the global tourist sector, and we have to survive in a very competitive environment. The fifth point is that we have, let's say, we need a supportive banking sector, rescheduling of the loans. This exercise goes on in Greece in general, and professionals believe that, of the sector, believe that they need 10% of the revenue they create as working capital to restart the sector, which in Greek terms means 1.5 to 2 billion euros. Sixth point is supporting working population, because those that work in the tourist sector are in a precarious position, mostly part-time jobs and seasonal employment. They are very vulnerable. And of course, very vulnerable are, let's say, the self-employed in very small family enterprises. So we have to intervene in their favor as well. Seventh point, encourage domestic tourism as a means to substitute part of the revenue lost due to the crisis of international tourism. Of course, Greece cannot survive with domestic tourism, but it's a measure that has to be taken. And finally, increase credit facilities and all kinds of support programs at the European level to send the right message of a unified approach, European solidarity, and strengthening European competitiveness in a very tough global market. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You gave us a brief overview about data who are really, I think, frightening if we do not act in the right way. I think the solution will be difficult, I think, to solve in this way that it has a long-term approach. But I would give this to the interventions to our speakers. Sorry, Helmut, Haley, perhaps you take over the floor. You as a travel operator, as a travel agent, you know the situation the best way. I think what is the situation in general and what means this for you as a tour operator? And why, how are you thinking we're coming out of this crisis? The possibility? Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Thank you to the team of SME Connect and SME Europe for the chance to speak to you today. Well, your questions are, of course, quite challenging. I'm the president of the EuropeVice, and I'm representing about 200 Austrian small and medium enterprises in tourism business. And I'm also the founder and CEO of 3 small tourism businesses, one of them in England, one of them in Ireland, and the main one here in Austria. The last time that I spoke about the challenges for small and medium enterprises in tourism was at the European Parliament on the 16th of July last year. On this occasion, we discussed the challenges of EU jurisdiction for SME in tourism. And in my speech, I focused on the problems that the Package Travel Directive brought with it. And for example, the insolvency protection rules and why tour operators are treated differently from big national airlines who do not have any insolvency protection. And I also spoke about the challenges regarding digitalization and the new ways of distribution. Well, today, of course, the situation is a very different one and a very, very challenging one. I would like to explain why travel agencies and tour operators all over Europe are confronted with a situation that is threatening the existence due to the COVID-19 crisis and the consequences of the package travel directive. Well, as some other sectors, we are facing zero turnover since the beginning of March. But more important and very specific to the tourism business, we can't really see an end of this horrible situation. So basically, we are running a marathon without knowing what the finishing line looks like, because the travel bans will continue globally for many, many months. And if that were not enough, the package travel directive dictates us that in case of cancellations of holiday packages due to official travel bans, we need to pay back 100% of the package prices and the costs. All the money we collected from clients for the organization, for the booking of their trips, now need to be paid back full. This is basically impossible, as number one, parts of that money have been used for payments to employees and for running costs of the businesses. And B, parts of the money have been forwarded to various partners worldwide, airlines, hotels, etc. But some partners are now only offering the possibility to postpone the trip or to provide vouchers instead of refunds, which in some EU countries now is legally possible, but in most it's not. So last but not least, these package travel directive rules, and this is very important to point that out, about paying back everything to the clients is totally understandable, and it makes sense on a small scale for some bookings or individual cases, for example, travel bans for a specific country or catastrophes in specific areas. Yes, but never ever they were made for a pandemic and a global stop of all travel activities. So this is why now thousands of travel agencies and tour operators, even only in Austria, we're talking about 2,260 travel agencies and 750 tour operators. With hundreds of thousands of jobs, we are now close to a point of being lost totally and for a long time. So what I think is what we need is a clear and a uniform rule for all EU countries. For example, vouchers in all countries, and for all involved providers, or no vouchers at all. We cannot just have vouchers for airlines and not for tour operators. We cannot have vouchers in Italy, but not in Austria. And what we definitely need, and I know this is probably the biggest and crucial difficulty, we need compensation payments from the EU or the national governments to be able to pay back some of the money to our clients. It's not possible to pay all back. It's all in businesses and in the work of the last, say, 6-7 months. So without compensation payments, we cannot fully pay back all our clients. And on the long run, I'm afraid that the EU will definitely need to adapt the package travel directive. We need to provide solutions for pandemics like COVID-19. And in the last couple of days, listening to all the media, I'm really afraid that a lot of countries are now going into a national thinking and in a very isolated way of thinking. So I personally really hope that the member states of the European Union will understand the importance of uniform regulations and that they will really work together closely and across all borders. Otherwise, we will be lost totally. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think you gave us a good perspective. I think the problem is this long-term problematic, but what we are doing if it's a stop and go, if you have a opening of the travel measures, then a closing down again,
yeah.
I think this will be a never-ending problem then in the end. And it's also, I think, in many businesses, also in use, how to share the costs between consumers, taxpayers, and the organizers, who share the risk, in fact. Huh? Do you think it will change in long term, because perhaps it's not the last pandemic, It would
100%
change
for sure.
your branch totally, and also
Well,
how we.
To be very honest, I think it was Bill Gates in 2015 who already said that this is the new crisis. This is the new world war. It's viruses. It's situations like we're facing now. So obviously, even if we can now fight it with compensation payments over a couple of months, it will come back at some point. There will be higher numbers coming back in a couple of months' time if we now start to open businesses again. Austria has started yesterday. Opening companies again, only for some parts of the companies, and I'm pretty convinced that at the end of the day, numbers will go back up again, and until vaccination is there, it will be a huge problem for a long time, and it will come back as a boomerang.
Thank you very much for your opinion here, and now we're coming to the airlines, to the regional airlines. Montserrat, how is the situation now for you? I think we read a lot about Lufthansa, about Ryanair, but we don't read so much about the small airlines. How is the situation for you now?
Hello, Horst, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting us to this seminar this morning. Just for the ones that don't know us, we, ERA, European Regions Airline Association, we represent 60 European airlines and more than 200 industry companies in total, of which many are small and medium sized enterprises. We have been in business for 40 years. This is our 40th anniversary this year. In fact, we were going to celebrate it, but we will, but in a different way probably. And I have to say, well, we have never witnessed anything like this for a number of reasons. And I think we all listening to the word unprecedented many times in the last few weeks. The first reason is because this is a global crisis, and we have seen other crises in aviation. Aviation is used to resilience. We are a very resilient industry. We have gone through wars, we have been to terrorist attacks, we, you know, the ash cloud, the 9/11, but this is massive. And it's huge, and it's affecting large airlines, as you say, but also very small airlines, of course. And it's not localized, it's global. And that's also very important because I think we didn't see it coming. You know, I think probably the airlines could have actually organize themselves, but it has been a shock. So the speed is huge, and the airlines had to adapt really fast. So the airlines are doing a number of things, obviously reducing all the variable costs to zero, basically. Grounded the fleet. 100% of the fleet are grounded except for the ones doing cargo operations, repatriation, urgent medical services, medical evacuation operations, these type of operations. The rest are grounded. There are hardly any flights, nothing. So airlines are in desperate need to pay for the very basic minimum costs, fixed costs that they need to keep their operating license going. So when things go back to normal, which is not going to be a switch on, switch off, it's going to be a very slow process, they can go back to operation because this is a very much regulated activity. So therefore they need to keep a minimum structure, and that costs money. In the meantime, the passengers are putting a huge pressure on the airlines to get refunds on the tickets that were bought for the summer season, and this is creating a huge constraint in the airlines that at the moment need cash relief, basically. What we see is also, apart from, you know, the unprecedented situation, the uncertainty, we also see that there is a very, unfortunately, uncoordinated response from the different countries. So every airline is trying to react different ways depending on their countries, and we see a lot of lobbying going on at the local level, also a national level. And we saw that 18 I mean, last year and the year before were historical in the number of airline bankruptcies in Europe, over 18, actually 19, with Flybe, which was the latest one, went bankrupt in the last 2 years, many of which were small and medium-sized airlines. And as I said, because the countries are implementing different support measures, and the airlines are all different in their business models, in their size, in the way they operate, it's very difficult to for them to assess how to go back to operation, and whether the business model that used to work will work in the future, in a completely different economic environment, in a completely different, probably also political environment, and as Mrs. Monteiro said, the domino effect in the local economies also is huge, on the SMEs of the countries and the families, and it's very different from country to country. We're also seeing state aid support and we're kind of concerned about how is that going to materialize, because some countries may have more difficulties in providing this state aid. Some countries already have nationally owned airlines, and therefore there is a risk that the less efficient airlines are actually subsidized. Some countries have other priorities like social and health, and they simply don't have the financial muscle to support the airlines. So we obviously represent regional airlines, so we see that one area where the support is very much justified is the regional sector, where some routes are already subsidized through PSOs, but there are a number of also airlines that are very well run, that provide very important regional services that will need this help to survive. So each demand for state aid will need to be carefully considered on a case-by-case basis. And then there's the other point, which is was mentioned also, is the vouchers. We think the vouchers are absolutely needed at this point. Of course, the passengers at some point will get, if they decide, their money back, but there needs to be a little bit of patience from the side of the passengers and also from the regulators. I know in this context we all understand the issue. I think we need also wider support from the Council and from the Parliament, and hopefully this will be one relief measure that will be approved in the next few days. I remain positive and optimistic, but there will be a complete reshift of aviation as we have known before, and I'm afraid that a lot of small and medium airlines will be lost, and this has, as we mentioned, a domino effect on smaller companies and families and smaller businesses. So this is something we will need to carefully watch and discuss with our politicians to get the support needed.
Thank you very much. I think this is also a danger for some regions like islands, or hard to reach if the airline is not existing anymore. So that we will have perhaps also a shift totally where population is settling, because there is no infrastructure at the end anymore, no work. I think this will be really will change the landscape. But we have also a technical question from Pietro Fiocchi, member of the European Parliament. He asked if there is also in the pipeline a possibility to filtration the air so that there is no contamination in the cabin, so that traveling by airplanes would be safer. This is his.
Yeah, I haven't responded in writing because I don't know. I will respond to him. I know that, manufacturers are working on simulators, and there's new technology coming up, and there's already some recycling of the air, etc. But I suppose this is going to change. There's going to be a huge psychological effect. It's not only the material effects, it's also the psychological effects on the travelers and the passengers. So some people will not be able to afford it, but some people will not be willing to go on an airplane. or a train, or on a small space. So all these things are being considered, and of course, the same way the environmental impacts have been addressed in the last few years. I think this is something the health issues will be definitely prioritized.
Thank you very much. And now we're coming to Claudia. You are in fact an expert from the local and the European level, and you were a member of the committee of TRAN. Do you see how the regions and the European Union can work better together? I think we need a forces and a strategy who is really cohesive. What is your ideas to this experience better?
Thank you, Horst. Welcome to everyone. Hi. I'm sitting here in my hometown of Salzburg in Austria. And as you know, Salzburg is the city of Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, of culture and of festivals. And Salzburg is, or I must say now was, the city of quality tourism on the one hand, and on the other hand, a city of the mass tourism. Many guests, many so-called bus tourists, mainly from Asia, especially from China. From my apartment in the middle of the city, now I look at the squares and the sites which are normally at this time full of tourists, full of life. When I look down now, I see yawning emptiness. All accommodation facilities are now closed until mid-May, then a new decision will be made. All restaurants are also to be kept closed, except the food deliveries. All events are cancelled until the end of June, all street festivals, all sporting events, including the marathons, all cultural and traditional festivals. It's still open how things will continue with the Salzburg Festival, which celebrates its 100th birthday this year. The whole branch is groaning, and it's already very cautiously expecting a minus of 2/3 of the annual turnover. We ask us, but what will the rest of 2020 look like? Will the initial restrictions be eased and lifted? Will hotels and restaurants be allowed to unlock again? Will the borders be opened again so that Europeans can move freely in Europe again? It's only now that we all have to realize, it's a sidestep, how quickly such achievements can disappear. The Republic of Austria is trying to help the businesses. The federal government has therefore decided of a 38 billion euro aid package to prevent the mass unemployment in our country and the insolvency of the companies. In addition to the 4 billion emergency aid package, which was launched to ensure short-time working and to support small and medium-sized enterprises in particular, there will be a further 9 billion euro in guarantees and liabilities to secure loans. It's very important for the hotels, for example. 15 billion will be invested in emergency aid to support the sectors that have been hit particularly hard by the corona crisis. In addition, there will be 10 billion euros in tax deferrals, as this is particularly necessary now in times of the declining sales. The aim is to do everything possible to ensure that the domestic businesses, especially the family business and small and medium-sized enterprises, come through the crisis in good shape so that as many people as possible keep their jobs. Everyone is aware that the tourism sector is a very important resource for the European economy and facilitates cultural and economic exchange. COVID-19 and the preventive measures taken by national governments to prevent contacts and, as a result, contagion, are having a major impact not only on tourism businesses, but also and above all on the aviation sector, as we heard. If there are no open borders, if passengers can and may not longer travel, if flight bans are imposed, everyone is affected, but especially the SMEs. In my opinion, the reaction of the European Commission and its president was too weak and too late. For example, at the latest, when the lorries at the border between Austria and Hungary had to put up with kilometer-long traffic jams, but thus jeopardizing the important supply of everyday goods, there should have been much more outcry. The green priority lane for lorries, which allows them to cross the border under simplified conditions, is absolutely essential, also and above all in the light of our common internal market. The supply chains must be guaranteed. This is a European task and must be regulated there too. But now let's come back. What is to happen next? Do we all have to rethink, or will the old normality return? In my opinion, the longing for travel as part of life will remain, but after the health issue Corona will be solved. Perhaps these journeys will become more sustainable, perhaps more target group oriented. In many European countries, such as Spain, for example, the summer tourism this year relies on the local population. Apart from the fact that it is important that family and regions should be able to live from the tourism, we have the issue here that the unemployment figures or the numbers of those who are sent into short-time work are skyrocketing, and there may be no money for holidays, not even at home in their own country. And the 150 million overnight stays in Austria will be far from being made up by local travelers. Creativity is needed. Above all, an analysis is needed of how quickly it is possible to fall from the over-tourism to under-tourism. Now is the time to ask ourselves what a tourism mix can look like that keeps the cities livable for the inhabitants and offer guests a pleasant experience. The question will have to be asked, what will happen to the trade fairs? What will happen to the congresses and sporting events? And this depends on how quickly there will be a vaccination or other solution for COVID-19. We will have to continue planning in the medium term. Possibly international travel will start again next year, which is to be hoped for. And I think we will also have to rethink, does an intra-European flight really have to cost 19 euros? Are all business trips necessary? I'm very glad that there is a solution to save the slots for the airlines, but we will also have to rethink the means of the transport. Flight, train, car and ship can and must coexist for the sake of us all. It's very important for me to mention that. Perhaps the current crisis will cause a slowdown. In any case, we should not leave anyone behind, especially not the small and medium-sized enterprises that shape the face of a country. A hotelier friend of mine with whom I spoke on the phone for a long time said that you now have to drive on site foresightly, because unlock, lock, unlock is not the solution and not sustainable, especially not for the employees. We are all in a waiting position. Many have existential fears, but we can emerge stronger from this crisis because we have learned that the world as we know it cannot be taken for granted. And it has been shown that how creative many business people are in maintaining their companies and leading them through the crisis. This courage and this creativity will definitely shape the future. This is what I'm building on, and I support everyone as much as possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think you remember that how this all depending to each other and how this is also related to our lifestyle. Yes. In the end, also it is coming up. Who is it's not only tourism, it's business sector, it's everything, travel, movement. I think it's affecting in the end. It's really changing our lifestyle. I think for the next. But what will be the solution now? I heard now a lot also from the questions of the audience, vouchers. Do we have, when we have a common result strategy in Europe in the next months for vouchers, what you are expecting from the MEPs, perhaps an answer, when you're expecting an answer to this voucher discussion? Will we have 27 solutions or member state solutions, or we will have a common solution soon? I think, is there already, Claudia? Please.
It's me or
Thank
Claudia?
you. Claudia Monteiro, Claudia Schmidt.
Monteiro. Exactly, I have to, yes. The floor is yours, Claudia Monteiro. Austrian
Okay,
Claudia and Portuguese. Sorry.
thank you. Let me just connect and share some thoughts that were, and maybe it gives an answer to the questions of the vouchers. It's not only the vouchers that we need to look at this in this particular moment. And listening to the other colleagues like Helmut and Montserrat, that are the sector that is really needing, what we understand, two things. The European project has failed in the beginning of this crisis, has failed understanding the big issue or the big problem, and not preparing all of these answers that we are asking today. We are asking for a common rules for the vouchers, but we need common rules for much more in this crisis. That's why for me, European Commission is trying to, but it's not sufficient. All the institutions need to work faster to give these answers that the tourism and travel are asking for. And when Helmut said that member states are doing by itself, of course, if there's no a common rules coming from the European Union, member states are running after the solution. So this needed to be the answer. Rules, common rules. We are good sending directive to all member states to impose lots of things. In this concrete case, we are not having those rules. So we need this answer quickly. That's why for at least last 5 years, in the Tourism and Transport Committee, together with other colleagues, we are asking for a budgetary line specifically for tourism. Because if we want to give these answers, and if we need money, we need a financial line, a budgetary line. So this is the point, this is the time for all of us make our lobby with inside the Parliament, the Commission. All the institutions need to work now with these solutions and giving money. And a second point is, what was this from the Eurogroup? 540,000 millions split for the 27. We have 100,000 millions for the employment. Okay, only France will stay with 20 or 30 for the employment problem, and the other member states. This is not sufficient. It was a really bad, not good. Well, it was good for the saying that we were all together, but in concrete terms, we need fresh money. We need to put money in the economy. We need to put money in the enterprises with getting down the taxes on the airlines. Of course, we need to revise the existent taxes or the deferment of new aviation taxes, but also with the agencies. We need to support them, not equally, but with equity, because we need to look, of course, to the enterprises and try to manage with the consumers. I understand that you are having difficult times with the aviation and of course with the agencies, but we also need to have a look to the consumers, because in the future all of us or all of you will need them So we need to give them also a support on the refund. The vouchers are a solution, but need to be with the member states. The rules need to be the same for all the member states. And maybe this is why the discussion inside the parliament needs to have big consensus in the political groups. And in this moment, I do believe that political perspectives or points of views need to be together. We need to give the answers to travel and tourism sector and to all the economies, and putting a little aside our differences politically. Sorry for being speaking a lot.
No, I think it's important that I think it's also that you bring emotions in this topic, because it's really something, I think, what is affecting the existence. There are always worries, if I heard this, to put money on the market, when it will end and what will be the long-term effect. We have like this, we had experience in Europe after wars and during wars, and I think this is a kind of a pandemic war, because sometimes you have to pay it back or you have to risk it. Perhaps if we're coming to the end here, I want to have a statement from our speakers still. Kirtsos, what is your opinion to this? The financial, we have to put money on the market, but when are we on the end of our reserves? When must be, in fact, I think there must be also not one moment effect, there must be a long-term effect then if we put money into the market. What you see, what is your idea, what you're thinking, how fast we can do this, how long we can do this, and where is the strategy, or is too much to ask now at the moment?
Okay, let me tell you that in Greece, we are hard pressed because we put a lot of money in the economy. We have to, but at the same time, our debt, our national debt as a percentage of GDP is skyrocketing, because we have the, we are the most indebted Eurozone country. Our debt, our public debt is 175% of GDP. And Italy's, which is the second indebted country, is 135% of GDP. It is obvious that by spending money and due to the reduction of tax revenues, which is unavoidable, our public debt within 2020 will break the barrier of 200% of GDP. And Italy's public debt will break the barrier of 150 of GDP and 160% or even 160 of GDP. Why am I talking about debt? Because, there is a tendency between the European South to support Eurobonds and the mutualization of debt so that we can increase the liquidity and create money. Of course, that are more developed and are better off and have a lower debt. Germany, for instance, less than 60% of GDP, are now becoming big spenders as well to support their economy, and they do not want to shoulder our debt as well. So it's a complicated situation. I don't know where it will end up. Personally, I'm a center-right MEP from a southern country. I support more Europe and more money, but I also understand that Germany, Austria, the Netherlands, Finland, and other countries do not want to follow, for the time being at least, this path. That's why I support a step-by-step approach. I think we have to find solutions for concrete problems, and at a later stage try to improve the European environment as a whole. But since I'm a realist, I don't foresee that we can agree on major European steps in the immediate future. but at least we can solve issues like the voucher. The voucher in Greece, we consider it is very important because all the Greek economy and the tourist sector is are undergoing a cash crisis. So we are among the countries that are eager to apply the voucher system, and we will apply it. But I also would like to be a European regulation concerning vouchers so that we can all move forward. I don't have an answer to your question. We have to survive in financial terms, because if you go back to the crisis, to the previous crisis, Greece is only 2% of GDP in the Eurozone, so it won't make a big difference. But Italy also follows the path of Greece. So it's a tricky situation. We have to find practical solutions, follow a step-by-step approach, and hope for the best as a whole, as the Eurozone and the European environment.
Thank you very much. And now we're coming to the last speakers. I think everybody has perhaps 2 sentences. What should the European Union do now, immediately? Monteiro, perhaps, you're starting. What should the EU do now, immediately?
Unprecedented times need unprecedented solutions. So I think they need to come together. I really think that the sentence from Claudia, European project has failed at the beginning of this project. It's spot on. They need to prove their existence.
Claudia Schmidt, what should the European Union do now, immediately?
Yeah, I think there is enough money, but we now have that the European Union has to spend this money, and the use must be sensible, and the European Union has to control the use, and the access to this money must be easy, not so complicated as to EFRE or something else. And I think that the model of assuming liability for loans is very important and forward-looking. And I say, just not too complicated. I think this is the most important things. And only at the end, I'm Austrian and I'm against the Eurobonds. And I hope that the EU 27 will agree this time. I hope so.
Thank you much. Helmut, what is your demand now?
Well, first of all, let me say I totally agree to a lot of things that have been said here. And Claudia, thank you very much for being open and honest regarding European Union in the beginning of the crisis. I think it's very important for everyone to be really open and transparent on these things. And second of all, my suggestion is also what Claudia said at the beginning. We need to be a bit more proactive. We need to be prepared for these situations in the future. And preparing now, I think the best situation could be that we all in tourism business sit together and think of what will be the situations in the next couple of years. We know one thing for sure, and this is it's not the end. If that crisis stops, if it ever stops, it's not the end of that situation, because viruses will come back. We will have pandemic situations again and again. So we will need clear laws and uniform rules about this for the future. That's the one thing. And the second thing is a very important one. I've been talking to at least 200 business owners in tourism business in the last 2 weeks. And everyone says exactly the same thing regarding the voucher situation. And Claudia was totally right. It's not a final solution. It's a temporary solution, but we have to be very honest here. It's only postponing a problem. It's only postponing the insolvency of tourism businesses. Because basically, if we have a clear rule on vouchers, it's meaning that we all end up in 1 or 2 years' time not having any more profits and money, because we can't do that business a second time. So if I sold a travel package to someone, and I now do not pay him back, but give him the voucher, I will have that work again, a second time, maybe even a third time, because I need to rebook it, I need to cancel it, and then I need to book it again. But I only get the profit once. So the vouchers will not be a very good solution for all of us. And even if we get the vouchers, they would need to be exactly the same in all countries, and I can't see that at the moment, to be very honest. So I think compensation payments for now is the only solution, and then we will not need to talk about laws and rules on how to treat these situations in the midterm future.
Thank you very much. If I can summarize this, we need in this sector help fast, but it's not done with this. We need a long-term strategy, and I think it will have not only an impact to tourism, it will have an impact how we are living in the future, how we want to live in the future. And I think what we can do, I was buying already vouchers for some restaurants where I like, and they asked me, but like you say, I can eat only once, not 5 times per week there. So it's only postponing the problem. I think we have to find problems together, the solutions together. I hope if you can send us your questions, we can deliver this to our speakers. But also if there is a portal, I see this with many questions from SMEs, where they can inform themselves in one platform and not 1,000 platforms, would be very helpful. One platform, because there's many points. If you have a tourism SME has also other problems, not only with the main business or how to get money, how it works with digital work and so on. We need, I think, really a organized information portal, and this would help a lot. And we as SME Connect, as SME Europe, we are open for you, that you send your request to us and we try to deliver it to our network. Thank you very much to the speakers, and thank you very much to the audience. And good luck in this, I have to say, bad times. Thank you.
Thank you.